feeling like you're trying to build that English vocabulary, maybe brick by painstaking brick, but you still find yourself struggling to actually, understand and speak easily.
Yeah, or maybe you're navigating all the grammar rules like it's some kind of maze.
Exactly. Or just feeling completely overwhelmed when you hear English spoken at, normal speed. If that sounds like you, you're definitely not alone.
Definitely not. But what's interesting here, I think, is that the huge amount of spoken English out there today, which, can feel a bit intimidating, actually holds the key. It really does.
It really does. And that's what we're diving into today. We've been listening to a conversation from the English on the Go podcast.
Right. The episode Boost Your English with Podcasts with Emma and Jake.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And our mission really is to pull out the most valuable bits from their chat. The insights that can genuinely fast-track your journey to better English listening and speaking to using podcasts.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Okay, so the conversation kicks off with Jake talking about something super common for English learners. What's that?
That gap, between being able to read and write okay, maybe quite well even, but still finding it really, really hard to follow along, let alone jump into spoken conversations.
Oh, yeah.
He actually used the word lost, which I think probably resonates with quite a few people listening.
Or absolutely. You can look at a page of English text and feel, pretty comfortable. But then someone starts speaking natural speed, natural rhythm, and it's like your brain just stalls.
Yeah.
Can't quite keep up in real time. I bet many of you listening have felt that kind of playing catch-up feeling.
Precisely. And this is where Jake had this moment. He called it a game-changing realization.
Okay.
The potential of English learning podcasts. This wasn't about hitting the textbooks harder.
Right.
It was about getting direct exposure to the actual sounds, the patterns of the language as it's really used.
It almost sounds too simple, doesn't it? That just listening could make such a big difference. What's going on there? Why is listening so effective beyond just, hearing words?
That's a great question. It really gets to the heart of how our brains naturally acquire language. Listening gives you all that crucial input. The intonation, the rhythm, the flow stuff, textbooks often just can't capture.
Sure.
And it lets you sort of subconsciously absorb grammar, common phrases, all in context, which can be way more effective than just memorizing lists of rules or words.
Okay, but it wasn't like Jake just flipped a switch and suddenly understood everything, right? He had a strategy.
Absolutely not. No, he was smart about it. He really stressed starting with podcasts made specifically for English learners.
Oh, okay.
The ones that usually have slower speech, maybe slightly simpler vocabulary. He even mentioned a couple by name.
Oh, yeah. Which ones?
The English We Speak and Speak English with Tiffany.
Right.
And this points to a really key learning idea, scaffolding. You start with something you can manage, something accessible.
Build confidence.
Exactly. You build that foundation of understanding, build confidence, and that makes it easier to then tackle harder stuff later. It avoids that feeling of being totally overwhelmed. It sets up a positive cycle, really.
Those sound like great starting points for anyone feeling a bit hesitant about jumping straight into, native level stuff. It's like warming up before exercise.
Precisely. You're tuning your ear, prepping your brain.
So, okay, he builds this base with learner podcasts. Then his next move was pretty clever, exploring more authentic content. Things like storytelling podcasts.
Yeah?
What was it? This American Life.
Yeah, and science shows stuff you should know. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think.
How so?
Because it stopped being just about learning English. He was diving into topics he was genuinely interested in.
Right.
Think about that you're not only improving your English listening, you're also learning about history or science or whatever else. It's incredibly efficient.
That's such a brilliant point. The language learning almost becomes secondary, doesn't it? It's the tool you're using to get to the fascinating information.
Exactly. And that taps into intrinsic motivation. When you actually care about the topic, you're just naturally going to stay engaged longer and absorb more. Less like studying, more like exploring.
So he's listening to this cool stuff, but it wasn't just passive, like having the radio on in the background.
No, definitely not just passive. He used some very specific active techniques to really squeeze the learning out of it.
Okay, like what he mentioned, keeping a notebook handy, right? To jot down words or phrases he didn't know.
Yeah, and that step is so crucial. Why? Because actively engaging with new vocabulary, writing it down, helps move it from just something you vaguely recognize
to something you can actually remember and use.
Precisely. It helps fix it in your memory. Plus, you've got this physical list you can go back to, review later.
Yeah.
It's about taking ownership of the learning process.
And he didn't just listen once, did he? He talked about listening to the same episode multiple times. What's the advantage there?
Well, the first listen, you're probably just getting the gist right, following the main ideas, the overall flow. But listening again, maybe a second or third time, lets you focus more deeply. You can pick out specific words, notice how sentences are put together, really pay attention to the pronunciation, the nuances. You move from surface understanding to much deeper comprehension.
That makes total sense. First time, just trying to keep afloat.
Yeah.
Later listens, you can actually start dissecting the language itself. And all this active listening wasn't just helping his understanding. It started impacting his speaking, too.
Exactly. Yeah. Jake described how all this listening helped him to hear the language inside his head, almost.
Hear it internally. What does that
Yeah.
mean exactly?
It's like the patterns,
Yeah.
the rhythms, the common phrases of English start to become more intuitive, almost like a background hum of understanding that helps you anticipate and process speech faster.
I see.
And then that internal awareness then just naturally started feeding into how he spoke.
Which led him to that technique, shadowing. Can you break that down for
Sure.
us?
Shadowing is basically listening to someone speak and trying to repeat what they say almost at the same time.
Like an echo?
Kind of, yeah. But you're really trying hard to copy their pronunciation, their intonation, the ups and downs, the rhythm, as closely as you possibly can. Jake mentioned pausing the podcast, saying sentences out loud, really focusing on sounding like the speaker.
He did admit it felt a bit silly at first. Why is it so effective then if it feels a bit awkward?
Well, it can feel strange because you're consciously coordinating listening and speaking in a new way, right?
Yeah.
But it's incredibly powerful for tuning your pronunciation, boosting your fluency, even getting a better feel for natural speech patterns.
So it's like training.
Exactly. You're training your mouth muscles and your ear to sync up, building that muscle memory for speaking English.
Okay, now, a really common roadblock for learners is time. Feeling like I just don't have hours to dedicate to studying. Jake had a good take on this, though.
He did. He pointed out how brilliant podcasts are because you can weave them into your day.
I love-
Commuting,
Yeah.
doing chores around the house, cooking dinner, going for a run. All those are potential podcast listening times.
It's about grabbing those moments, isn't it? Those little pockets of time we often just waste.
Mm-hmm. And Jake emphasized that even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes here and there, consistency is the magic ingredient. Those small, regular hits of English add up massively over time.
But, some people might find it hard to really focus if they're also, say, washing dishes. How do you make sure that listening isn't too passive?
That's a fair point. While just having it on gives you exposure for deeper learning, yeah, maybe try to have some focused listening time when you can, even short bursts.
Okay.
Or if you are multitasking, maybe pick tasks that aren't super demanding mentally. And even if it's mostly background listening, if a word or phrase jumps out at you, just make a quick mental note or even a voice note to check it later. Still counts.
Good tips. And it wasn't just about formal language, was it? Podcasts are gold mines for natural, everyday English. Jake had that funny story about the idiom, a piece of cake.
Agrees. Yeah, I liked that one. Thinking it was actually about cake. It's a perfect example, isn't it? Idioms, colloquialisms, they can be confusing at first.
Definitely.
But hearing them used in context in podcasts helps you get the real meaning, the real usage. In a way, just reading a definition in a dictionary often doesn't. It helps you develop that sort of gut feeling for the language, makes you sound more natural.
And Jake's whole journey is just really encouraging, isn't it? From feeling totally lost in conversations to feeling much more confident in his English. And the starting point was simply listening to podcasts.
It really highlights the power of, consistent exposure combined with that active engagement. It wasn't some crazy intense study regime.
No.
It was about finding a way to immerse himself in English that was actually enjoyable and crucially sustainable.
So if we were to boil down Jake's approach, the key steps seem to be start easy with learner stuff.
Right. Build that base.
Then find topics you actually like. Authentic content.
Yep. Makes it engaging.
Listen, actively take notes, listen again.
Crucial.
Try shadowing, even if it feels odd at first.
Get those mouth muscles working.
And just fit listening into your daily routine whenever you can.
Those are really solid practical takeaways for anyone listening who wants to level up their English. It reframes language learning, doesn't it?
Right.
Less of a chore, more of an interesting exploration.
Absolutely. So for you listening right now, maybe take a second to think. What subjects genuinely fascinate you? Is it travel, history, maybe comedy, tech? something totally different, whatever it is, the odds are really, really good that there's an English language podcast out there covering it.
Oh, definitely. There's a podcast for everything now.
There really is. So we'd really encourage you, go explore, start searching. You might just find that improving your English and learning something cool can happen at the exact same time, one podcast episode after another.